When President-elect Donald J. Trump proclaimed, "We are going to do things that haven't been done before. You pay 21% if you don't build here. And if you do, we're going to get it down to 15%. But you have to make your product in the USA." His words signaled a strategic pivot in global taxation. What may have seemed like a typical campaign promise carried significant implications for international tax policy, particularly as it relates to the OECD's Pillar 2 framework. Trump's team, it appears, understood the rules of the game better than most and decided to play along. The 21% corporate tax rate neatly aligns with the OECD's undertaxed profits rule, UTPR safe harbor, while the proposed 15% incentivizes compliance with the global minimum effective tax rate. But does this strategy represent a win for the United States, or a broader shift in how nations compete for foreign direct investment, FDI? Pillar 2 emerged in response to long-standing concerns about tax avoidance and deferral, particularly by U.S.-based multinationals. For years, the U.S. tax system allowed corporations to defer taxation on foreign profits until they were repatriated. While this incentivized investment in Europe, Asia, and other regions, it left the U.S. Treasury starved of corporate tax revenue. The outrage over untaxed profits wasn't entirely misplaced, but it often overlooked a critical nuance. The economic benefits of these strategies were largely retained by the countries receiving U.S. FDI. European nations, in particular, saw increased job creation, R&D funding, and corporate tax receipts stemming from U.S. investments. The only real loser in this arrangement was the United States. The 2017 U.S. Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, TCJA, sought to address this imbalance by introducing a hybrid territorial system with provisions like the Global Intangible Low-Taxed Income, GILTI regime, imposing a minimum tax on foreign profits. But the OECD's Pillar 2 initiative, the Global Minimum Tax Framework, was a direct response to these gaps in the system, ensuring that profits could no longer escape taxation entirely. The question now is, who benefits most under the new rules? The United States has taken a unique approach to Pillar 2. By maintaining a 21% corporate headline tax rate, the country ensures that it falls within the UTPR safe harbor, avoiding additional taxes imposed by other jurisdictions. At the same time, Trump's proposed 15% tax rate for businesses manufacturing domestically aligns precisely with the OECD's global minimum effective tax rate. 1. Avoiding top-up taxes. The UTPR safe harbor shields U.S.-based operations from top-up taxes in foreign jurisdictions, effectively nullifying Pillar 2's primary enforcement mechanism. 2. Attracting FDI, the 15% rate for domestic manufacturers creates a compelling incentive for businesses to relocate their operations to the United States, outpacing other jurisdictions that may struggle to compete on both tax rates and market size. By adhering to the Pillar 2 framework while leveraging it to their advantage, the U.S. is transforming itself into one of the most attractive destinations for global investment. Is this a good thing? The effectiveness of the U.S. strategy depends on one's perspective. From a domestic standpoint, it's difficult to argue against the potential benefits. Economic growth, lower effective tax rates for domestic manufacturers could spur job creation, infrastructure investment, and innovation. Revenue stability. The UTPR safe harbor ensures that the U.S. retains its share of global tax revenues, even under the Pillar 2 regime. Geopolitical influence. By becoming a magnet for FDI, the U.S. solidifies its position as a leader in global economic policy. However, the broader implications are less clear. Pillar 2 was designed to level the playing field in global taxation, ensuring that profits are taxed fairly regardless of jurisdiction. But the U.S. approach risks creating a new form of competition, one where nations race to optimize their tax systems within the constraints of Pillar 2, potentially undermining the framework's original intent. To understand the potential consequences, it's worth revisiting the historical context that led to Pillar 2's creation. For decades, U.S. multinationals were accused of exploiting tax loopholes to shift profits offshore, often to low-tax jurisdictions. But this criticism ignored the tangible benefits these practices brought to host countries. For example, Europe. U.S. investments in Europe generated significant local tax revenues, funding public services and infrastructure projects. Asia. FDI into Asian markets supported rapid industrialization, creating millions of jobs and fostering technological innovation. Latin America. Investments in manufacturing and supply chains stimulated economic growth in emerging markets. The net effect was a global redistribution of wealth, with the U.S. acting as a central hub for capital and innovation. While the system was far from perfect, it demonstrated the power of FDI to drive economic development across borders. The U.S. strategy under Pillar 2 represents a turning point in global tax policy. By leveraging the framework to its advantage, the country has positioned itself as both a compliant participant and a formidable competitor in the global economy. For policymakers, the challenge lies in balancing national interests with the broader goals of equity and fairness in taxation. For businesses, the message is clear. The rules of the game have changed, and strategic adaptation is essential. Ultimately, whether the U.S. approach is a good thing depends on one's perspective. From a domestic standpoint, it's a masterstroke of economic strategy. From a global perspective, it raises questions about the future of international cooperation in tax policy. One thing, however, is certain. The implications of Pillar 2 will reverberate for years to come, reshaping the landscape of global taxation in ways we are only beginning to understand.